You're listening to Long Listen, a space for deep dives into books that shape how we think, work, and live. No hype, no shortcuts, just thoughtful analysis, honest reflection, and conversations about ideas that deserve more than a 5-minute summary. Hey guys, picture this. Last month, I was arguing in a group chat about whether remote work is dead forever. I was so sure I was right. I had articles, statistics, hot takes, and that subtle, condescending tone that basically says, "I've done my research." And I felt good. Confidence. Superior, even. But halfway through typing another paragraph-length rebuttal, I paused. Not because someone proved me wrong, not because the data collapsed, but because I felt something else creeping in. Fear. The uncomfortable realization that maybe I wasn't defending a well-reasoned position. Maybe I was defending my own sense of safety. If remote work is dying, what does that mean for my career? For my flexibility? For the identity I've built around being future-proof? I wasn't protecting the truth. I was protecting myself, and that hit harder than any counter-argument in that chat. So, let me ask you something real. When was the last time you changed your mind about something that actually mattered to you? Not a movie preference. Not pineapple on pizza. I mean something tied to your identity, your politics, your ambition, your relationships. When was the last time you publicly said, "I was wrong"? Because honestly, with TikTok telling us what to think, with algorithms feeding us perfectly curated opinions, with cancel culture ready to drop at any wrong take, and with AI giving us instant answers to everything, this generation isn't lacking knowledge. We have more information than any humans in history. We can fact-check in seconds. We can generate arguments in milliseconds. We can sound smart fast, without ever thinking deeply. But here's the real paradox. This generation isn't suffering from ignorance. We have more info than ever. We're drowning in certainty. Certainty feels powerful. It gets us likes, retweets, claps from our tribe. It protects us from doubt. And that's exactly what Adam Grant takes part in. Think again. Not our smarts. Not our drive. He attacks the one thing that's way more uncomfortable. Our addiction to being right. Because the biggest danger isn't being wrong. It's refusing to rethink. So here's where Adam Grant's framework hits uncomfortably close to home. He says that when we talk about our beliefs, we tend to operate in one of three modes: the preacher, the prosecutor, or the politician. The preacher mode activates when our values feel threatened. We don't discuss. We declare. We don't explore. We defend. The prosecutor shows up when we're trying to prove someone else wrong. We gather evidence, cross-examine their logic, and wait for that gotcha moment. And the politician? That's when we adjust our stance to win approval. We say what earns applause, not what invites truth. None of these modes are about finding the truth. They're all about protecting our ego and looking good. And if I'm being honest, I'm guilty of all three. I preach veganism in my story, talking about ethics and climate impact like I'm delivering a TED Talk. Then I switch to prosecutor when a friend posts a steak photo, firing off documentaries and statistics like I'm building a legal case. And when my boss questions one of my ideas at work, suddenly I become a politician, softening my position, reframing it, saying whatever keeps me looking competent. It's sneaky how constant it is. I'm not really chasing truth. I'm just managing my image. And the dopamine hit from being right online? It's literally the same loop as scrolling for likes. That small rush when someone replies, "Exactly," or drops a fire emoji under your comment. That feeling when your argument lands and the other person goes quiet. It's chemical. It's addictive. No wonder we defend our opinions like they're our identity. Because in a way, they are. In a hyper-connected world, our beliefs are our brand. They signal which tribe we belong to. They determine who follows us and who unfollows. They shape who dates us, hires us, collaborates with us. Changing your mind doesn't just risk being wrong, it risks social instability. And that's why Grant argues we need a fourth mode: the scientist. The scientist doesn't marry beliefs. The scientist tests them. They treat opinions like hypotheses, not heirlooms. Instead of asking, "How do I prove I'm right?" they ask, "What evidence would change my mind?" That question alone is terrifying. Because if you're honest, most of us don't actually want evidence that contradicts us. We want reinforcement. We want validation. We curate our feeds, our friends, even our news to avoid anything that makes us uncomfortable. We don't debate to learn. We debate to win. And winning feels good, but it also freezes us in place. Think about how many online arguments end with someone saying, "I stand by what I said." That phrase sounds strong, resolute, but sometimes it's just intellectual stubbornness dressed up as integrity. The truth is, being wrong threatens our self-image. If I admit I misjudged remote work, or nutrition, or politics, or career strategy, it means my past decisions might have been flawed. It means I trusted incomplete information. And that's uncomfortable. So we double down. We gather more proof. We dig trenches around our worldview. And in a world obsessed with hot takes and instant wins, the preacher, prosecutor, and politician dominate. The scientist? It's quieter, slower, less viral. But in 2026, with everything changing so fast, that might be the exact mindset we need to actually thrive, not just survive. Now here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. We like to believe that intelligence protects us from delusion, that the smarter we are, the less likely we are to cling to bad ideas. But Adam Grant flips that assumption completely. He argues that intelligence doesn't necessarily make you better at thinking. It often makes you better at defending what you already think. Intelligence isn't a shield against bias. It's a sharper sword for ego protection. And you can see this everywhere if you look closely. Think about those crypto bros in 2021 and 2022 who were so smart they knew Bitcoin would hit $100,000. They had charts. They had on-chain metrics. They had macroeconomic theories about inflation and fiat collapse. Every dip was healthy consolidation. Every crash was market manipulation. Every red candle was a buying opportunity. They rationalized everything, and the more the market dropped, the more complex their explanations became. It wasn't stupidity. It was overconfidence wrapped in intelligence. The problem wasn't that they lacked information. The problem was that they were too invested in being right. Because if Bitcoin doesn't go to $100,000, what does that mean? It means your financial plan was flawed. It means your tweets were wrong. It means you convinced friends and maybe even family to buy in. That's not just a market correction. That's identity collapse. So you double down. You defend harder. Until sometimes, you lose everything. And it's not just finance. It's closer to home. We all know that super intelligent friend who refuses to leave a toxic relationship. They can explain in 10 different ways why it's not that bad. They analyze attachment styles. They talk about trauma bonding. They bring up childhood patterns and communication frameworks. They are intellectually brilliant at describing the situation. But emotionally, they're stuck. They're not lacking insight. They're lacking willingness to update their story. Because leaving would mean admitting they misjudged the person. It would mean admitting they tolerated behavior they swore they never would. And that hurts more than staying. Intelligence gives them better language to justify staying. It doesn't automatically give them the courage to rethink. This is what Grant calls the trap of overconfidence. When you're smart, You're used to being right. You build a track record of good decisions. People praise your analysis. You start trusting your gut more and questioning it less. But confidence slowly turns into certainty, and certainty hardens like concrete. The more often you're right, the harder it becomes to admit you're wrong. That's dangerous in a world changing this fast. Careers shift overnight. AI automates entire skill sets in months. Entire industries get disrupted by a single algorithm update. If you're too attached to yesterday's model, you quietly become obsolete. And the scary part is, you won't notice at first, because your intelligence will generate explanations for why nothing needs to change. This is just hype. It'll be correct. People are overreacting. We saw it with tech layoffs. We saw it with crypto. We see it with remote work. We even see it in cultural conversations. The smartest voices often have the most elaborate defenses. But elaboration isn't evolution. Being able to explain something doesn't mean you're willing to change it. And here's the deeper psychological layer. Admitting you're wrong doesn't just update a belief. It destabilizes your sense of self. If I was wrong about crypto, maybe I'm not as financially savvy as I thought. If I was wrong about my partner, maybe my judgment isn't as sharp as I believed. If I was wrong about my career path, maybe I built my identity on something fragile. That shakes who we think we are. So we protect our ego no matter what. We twist the facts a little. We quietly move the goalposts. We cherry-pick what we remember. And since we're smart, we can dress it all up to sound completely logical. We don't lie to others first. We lie to ourselves. And that's the scariest part. Because self-deception feels like clarity. It feels logical. It feels justified. Adam Grant isn't attacking ambition or intelligence. He's warning us about attachment. Attachment to beliefs. Attachment to past decisions. Attachment to the version of ourselves that felt certain. In a slower era, maybe that rigidity didn't cost as much. But now, in a world where markets move in hours and narratives shift in days, rigidity is expensive. Flexibility is the new intelligence. And flexibility doesn't mean being spineless or trend-chasing. It means holding your beliefs with enough confidence to act, but enough humility to revise. It means being willing to say, based on what I know now, I think this is true, but I'm open to new data. That sentence sounds simple, but socially, it's radical, because it removes the performance of certainty. It trades ego for growth, and maybe that's the real competitive edge now. Not the loudest arguer, not the smartest sounding voice, but the one who can rethink the fastest. So if intelligence isn't the solution and certainty is the trap, what does rethinking actually look like in real life? Adam Grant talks about developing a scientist mindset, but let's translate that into 2025 terms. A scientist doesn't fall in love with a hypothesis. They test it. They actively look for disconfirming evidence. They design experiments that could prove them wrong. The goal isn't to protect the theory. The goal is to get closer to reality. Now imagine applying that to your career, your politics, your fitness routine, your relationships. Instead of saying, "This is who I am," you start saying, "This is my current model." That small shift changes everything. Because models are meant to be updated. Identities feel permanent. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for creators, entrepreneurs, and anyone building a presence online. Most of us are rewarded for consistency, not evolution. Algorithms like predictable content, audiences like stable personas, brands like clear positioning. If you built your platform on remote work is the future, or crypto is freedom, or college is useless, your audience expects that version of you tomorrow. Changing your mind feels like betrayal. Consistency builds followers. Rethinking risks them. That's the tension. And it's real. I've felt it. Maybe you have too. You post something confidently. It gets traction. People agree. It becomes part of your identity. Then 6 months later, you learn something new. The data shifts. Your perspective matures. But now you hesitate. Because if you publicly rethink, you risk looking inconsistent, weak, flaky, or worse, wrong. And in a culture obsessed with being right, wrong feels like social death. But here's what Grant would argue. Refusing to rethink is intellectual death. Look at how fast the world is moving. AI tools that didn't exist a few years ago are replacing workflows today. Economic conditions shift quarterly. Cultural conversations evolve weekly. If your belief system is static in a dynamic world, you're slowly drifting out of alignment with reality. And reality doesn't care about your brand. It doesn't care about your follower count. It responds to accuracy and adaptation. The market rewards flexibility more than pride. That's why the scientist mindset isn't passive. It's proactive. It means deliberately exposing yourself to opposing views. It means asking, what would have to be true for me to change my mind? It means conducting personal belief audits. Once a quarter, you sit down and list your strongest convictions. Then you ask, what evidence supports this? What evidence contradicts it? When was the last time I seriously questioned this? If the answer is never, that's not strength, that's stagnation. But let's go deeper. The hardest part of rethinking isn't intellectual, it's social. Humans evolved in tribes. Belonging meant survival. When you rethink publicly, you risk stepping outside your tribe. And tribes punish deviation, not always aggressively, sometimes subtly. Fewer likes, awkward silence, a DM like, I thought you were different. That gut punch feels almost like real danger, because to our brains, losing the tribe kinda is. So of course we avoid it. We stay consistent. We stay predictable. We stay safe. But safety has a cost. If you never update your beliefs because you're afraid of losing approval, you trade growth for belonging. And over time, that gap widens. You start noticing that your opinions feel outdated, that your certainty feels forced, that younger, more adaptive thinkers are overtaking you, not because they're smarter, but because they're more flexible. Adaptability compounds. Stubbornness just hardens. And here's the uncomfortable truth most creators won't say out loud. If you start rethinking publicly on social media, you might lose followers, friends, even your brand. But if you never rethink, you become the 40-year-old still stuck in 2020 opinions. You become that person still quoting 2020 takes, defending models the world left behind, fighting yesterday's battles. That's not wisdom. That's just becoming a meme of your past self. So ask yourself something honest. So ask yourself, are you chasing short-term applause or long-term smarts? Are your beliefs true or just comfortable? And the one that really stings, are you willing to look dumb for a year so you can actually get smarter for life? So let's bring this down from theory to survival. Because for most of us listening to this isn't just a philosophical exercise. This is about staying relevant in a world where AI is rewriting job descriptions faster than universities can update their syllabi. We're not debating abstract ideas in a vacuum. We're trying to build careers, relationships, and identities in an environment that shifts every quarter. And here's the brutal reality. If you can't rethink, you can't adapt. And if you can't adapt, you get replaced. Not because you're untalented, not because you're lazy, but because you're rigid. So let's talk practical. Real talk for us young people trying to survive AI eating our jobs. Hack number 1. Every Sunday night, do a 5-minute belief audit. That's it. 5 minutes. Write down 3 things you're extremely sure about in your career or life right now. Maybe it's remote work is the only future. Maybe it's AI won't replace creative jobs. Maybe it's this industry is stable. Then try to destroy them. Not gently question them. Try to dismantle them like you're arguing against yourself in court. What trends contradict this? What data weakens this assumption? What would have to happen for this to collapse? If you can't find weaknesses in your strongest beliefs, you're not thinking hard enough. The point isn't to become cynical, it's to stay agile. Hack number 2. When you have a strong opinion, force yourself to write the opposite argument as if you genuinely believe it. Not sarcastically, not lazily, seriously. If you think college is outdated, write a passionate defense of higher education. If you think AI is overhyped, write the case for why it will dominate everything. It feels gross at first. It feels like betrayal. Your ego resists. But that resistance is the muscle working. It's like mental CrossFit. You're training flexibility under pressure. The ability to argue both sides doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous in the best way. Because now you're less predictable, less dogmatic, more nuanced. And nuance wins long term. Hack number 3. Curate a disagree list. Follow 5 to 10 people who trigger you. Not trolls, not extremists. Intelligent voices who genuinely see the world differently. Don't follow them to fight. Follow them to observe patterns in their thinking. I did this with some finance Twitter accounts I used to hate. I thought they were arrogant, simplistic, annoying. But over time, I noticed they saw risks I ignored. They questioned the narratives I swallowed whole. And now, ironically, half my best ideas come from analyzing viewpoints I once dismissed. The more I expose myself to different views, the less fragile my thinking becomes. Staying isolated just makes my biases stronger. And here's something important. This isn't about becoming neutral on everything. It's not about moral relativism. You can still have strong values. Actually, you should. But attach your identity to principles, not predictions. To curiosity, not conclusions. If you see yourself as someone who seeks truth, updating your beliefs makes you stronger. If you see yourself as someone who's always right, every change feels like defeat. That difference determines your trajectory, especially in the AI era. Because AI thrives on pattern recognition and data aggregation. If you're static, you become predictable. If you're predictable, you're automatable. Human advantage now lies in adaptability, creativity, and cognitive flexibility. The irony? The more we cling to certainty, the more we become like outdated code. The world updates weekly. If you skip the patches, you start glitching. So treat your beliefs like software. Version 1.0 was necessary. It got you here. But it's not sacred. It's not permanent. You don't insult your past self by upgrading. You honor them by evolving. And yes, rethinking will feel uncomfortable. It will feel destabilizing. You might lose arguments. You might lose status in certain circles. But what you gain is resilience. When markets shift, you pivot faster. When industries change, you reskill faster. When relationships evolve, you adapt healthier. Certainty feels strong. Flexibility actually is. So if you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. Build the habit of challenging yourself before the world forces you to. In this year and beyond, the winners won't be the loudest or the most certain. They'll be the ones who can rethink without falling apart. And that skill? You can start training it tonight. Let's be honest about the emotional cost for a second. Changing your mind doesn't feel inspiring. It doesn't feel enlightening. It feels like ego death. It feels like breaking up with a past version of yourself that you once defended publicly, passionately, maybe even aggressively. You don't just update an opinion, you detach from an identity, and that can sting. People notice. They screenshot your old takes. They remind you of who you used to be. They call you inconsistent, wishy-washy, fake, or sold out. And if your self-worth is tied to being perceived as stable and strong, that criticism hits deep. Growth often looks like weakness to everyone watching. But here's the flip side nobody talks about enough. If you never update your internal software, you slowly turn into a fossil. You become that person clinging to old narratives because they once worked. You defend outdated frameworks not because they're accurate, but because they're familiar. And familiarity feels safe. But safety without evolution is stagnation. The world doesn't freeze just because you're comfortable. Technology advances, culture shifts, data accumulates. If you stay the same while reality changes, you don't preserve your identity. You distort it. Refusing to change doesn't protect you. It just traps the old version of you. And honestly, I'd rather be a work in progress than a monument to my 25-year-old self. Refusing to change doesn't protect you. It just traps the old version of you. I want to be known for curiosity, for adaptability, for being brave enough to say, that version of me got me here. But it's not the final version. Because at the end of the day, the only identity worth protecting is the one that's allowed to evolve. So let's land this. The smartest people in the room aren't the ones who win every argument. They're not the fastest debaters or the loudest voices or the ones with the cleanest hot takes. They're the ones brave enough to outgrow their own arguments. The ones who can say, that made sense to me once, but I've learned something new. That's not a weakness. That's evolution. And in a world moving this fast, evolution beats ego every time. So, here's a simple challenge for this week. Pick one thing you're absolutely certain about, something you'd normally defend without hesitation, and try thinking again. Not to abandon it, just to test it, stress it, see where it cracks. Curiosity is a competitive advantage now. Drop that belief in the comments. Tell me what you're re-examining. I read every single one. And who knows, maybe we'll rethink it together. See you next time.